But yeah, Aberfeldy 16. This is a Bacardi product. Aberfeldy is a Bacardi product. Some of this juice goes into Bacardi's various blends of Scotch. Bacardi owns Dewar's, in case that was a whiskey you've heard of. So there is Aberfeldy in Dewar's, and there is also Craigellachie in Dewar's too, in some kind of proportion. I think Aberfeldy does more volume than Craigellachie. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, this is 40% ABV, 80 proof. It is chill filtered and probably color added. Ooh. That being said, this one's a little different than the 12. So we'll get this one back out again. That's not the right thing to open. So this 12-year-old, basically same ABV and proof, but this one is 12 years in refill, rechar, ex-bourbon barrels, and hogsheads, and ex-sherry butts. So there's a mix of sherry butts, refill and rechar, ex-bourbon barrels, and ex-bourbon hogsheads, 12 years of age. So those things are all aged separately and then vatted to produce this result, which, again, this is probably colored, but just for sake of rough understanding, look at the color of this one. Assume it's not colored for a minute, but it is. And then look at the color of this one. So this is not 4 years. This is not 4 years difference in color. How do I know this? Well, first of all, it's probably colored, but this 21, which makes color a little mute, but this 21 is still lighter in color than this one, roughly. So what's the deal with this one? Why is it different? That's because it's basically different. The barrels are different, basically. So despite this one having sherry in it, it's sherry that's part of a vatted blend. This one is 16 years, first fill, refill, and rechar ex-bourbon, just like this one, except this one doesn't have first fill in it, I think. It just has refill and rechar. There's some first fill ex-bourbon in here, but it does not have sherry butts mixed into the vat. Instead, those ex-bourbon whiskeys are then put for 6 months in a deluxe, and then they use the word deluxe, first fill ex-sherry Oloroso cask. So while the sherry is part of the vat in this one and in the 21, it's part of the vatting. The 16 is finished. It's ex-bourbon matured, 16 years ex-bourbon matured whiskey, finished in Oloroso sherry cask of some kind. They don't say it's necessarily sherry butts or sherry hogsheads, but it's probably one of the two or combination of the two. So that would make sense why the color is darker. But ultimately, they're colored some amount probably anyways. So there's no natural color labeling on here at all. So, but that's basically the reason that you would assume if the colors were natural. But that's the main difference between the 12, the 16, and the 21, is that 16 is a little bit different. It's not got sherry in the vatting. It's instead finished in, everything is finished in a sherry butt instead of having sherry mixed in. That being said, of course, we're talking about the Golden Dram, Aberfeldy, the Golden Dram. Why do they call it the Golden Dram? So the water source at this distillery, the Patilly Burn, has an alluvial gold deposit. So back in the day, guys used to pan for gold in the river, the Burn, that now Aberfeldy uses to dilute and its spirit. So that means there is some amount of gold in the water. Real gold, a little bit of gold. Not enough gold that people pan for gold there anymore, but there is trace elements of gold in the water that they use. That means there is literal gold in Aberfeldy. That that is why it is the golden dram. Um, wow, you're so rude to the cat. She was all over me today. I got fluff all over me. All right, so we'll give this a shot, and if we're so inclined, we'll compare it to the 12. Long. Great pop. Great cork. Great unnatural color. You can't even tell that light is on. Like a little bit. All right, so here's our coloration here, which is definitely like super deep in color. Probably not. That's probably not natural, but I mean, it could be. It could be mostly natural. Again, it depends on the vatting, right? Every vatting you have is going to be a slightly different color, and in theory, the reason why they allow E150 caramel coloring in this stuff is so that if they do 10 vattings and, you know, 4 out of 10 of them are like 20% lighter, they can make them all look the same color so people don't think there's anything wrong with the product when they get it. That's the reason. But they might juice it a little bit too, you know. They might help themselves out a little bit. That being said, you know, it's not the thinnest thing. Again, since we're on 16 years, the water required to cut this down to 80 proof is going to be much less than the water required to cut a 12-year-old down to 80 proof because more alcohol has evaporated in the barrel with the extra 4 years age. So it's going to be less watery ultimately, despite being the same proof. I think that's kind of what we said roughly about the 12-year-old too when we tried it. Is it's pretty good, but it's just a little light. It's very approachable, and I think it's just because, you know, again, we're dealing with an 80 proof spirit, and this one's also 80 proof, but again, more years in the barrel, less water added, more flavor for more years in the barrel too, in theory. So with this one, where the whole spirit is sherry finished, probably there'll be more of an impact of those sherry related notes, those spice notes, those raisin dried fruit characters, and perhaps leading in eventually to some like richer, darker toffees and sweetnesses. Um, Whereas like the 12 or the sherry in the mix, there might be some dried fruit character in there, but it's almost all in those citrus and honey and malty characters. All right. And yeah, it's like obvious, immediately obvious to me that this one has just like way more sherry impact. It's way more on that like figs, dates, raisins realm. I'm still getting a little light amount of citrus kind of shining through. Yeah, it's nice to see. So despite the fact that, yeah, it is more on the sherry, like quite a bit heavier on the sherry, there's still some of those like characteristics from the ex-bourbon, the large ex-bourbon maturation, kind of like hitting at a lesser tone. You still get some of that citrus. Still some of that malty character is present, but a little lower. There's still a bit of a like a perfume note for me. It's a little bit perfumey.
I'm a prime customer. What's above being a prime customer?
I almost dropped this dram. Maybe it's too loud on my end. Thank you for being a customer. I really appreciate it. What's above being a prime customer? And yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, both you guys. Anything in green will add to our community infinity bottle. Anything you guys want in green highlight in there. Probably being a paid customer. I think it's about the same. It's weird. It depends on like what region you're from and stuff like that, but it's about the same. Now, maybe tier 2 is above being a prime customer. I'm actually getting a good amount of like richer red fruit that's not like dry. Usually with really sherried stuff, the sherry cask comes across like very dry, like raisins and dates, or like apricot, like dried apricot. But I will say one of the pleasant things about this particular dram is, at least on the neck pour, I'm getting some signs of like a juicy fruits, you know? Like there's some hydration there. It's not all like dried up fruit. And I'm getting a little bit of like a plum that reminds me of a port cask. Which is not that common in sherry, but you could definitely get a plum off of sherry. So I kind of like that. Again, I think you can kind of tell that little, like, that Highland character is in there. Again, there's still that little bit of citrus in there. It's pretty nice. I can't disagree with the nosing anyway. The tone, not the tone, the volume and intensity of like the non-sherry notes is like a little low. But there's a good breadth of aromas, even if it's like very sherry forward. And that deluxe sherry cask is hitting pretty well. All right. So our Aberfeldy 16-year-old Highland single malt Scotch whiskey on the palate. Just launch it on. It's not the most intense flavor. You do get a strong amount of that raisin character. There is some maltiness and citrus on the palate. They're all quite present, but it's a little like tame. It's a little toned down for my personal preference. Into the finish, you get some spice, a little bit of oakiness. That raisin's still present. Finish is not terribly long. We'll call it like medium minus kind of finish. I think overall you do get a little bit more flavor impact. Remember the 12, get it from the 12, and we'll just pour 12 real quick just to do a compare. But still, the fact that this is 80 proof is like harming the intensity of the flavors for obvious reasons, right? We would like to see this like 46% alcohol. That would be the goal, I think. It's like one of those things where there's like there's nothing wrong with the bottle. It's just a little tame, you know. It's a little low in intensity. And for someone who maybe like isn't used to neat pours of alcohol, that might be fine for you. But when you get to like kind of a more seasoned level, you're looking for more punch and flavor. And just coming off of whiskeys that are like 100 proof or more, this is quite soft by comparison. The flavors are nice, but they're just a little tame. That being said, it's very approachable. It's very drinkable. It's pleasant, like, again, sherry forward flavors on the palate. You get a little bit of that dried fruit in the finish, too. They're just not nearly as intense as I would like them to be. But they may be perfectly intense for someone who is kind of just entering in to spirits. Not that there's anything wrong with drinking something that is like lower proof if you're seasoned, but just this particular bottle, it's not hitting the like flavor intensity level that I would like, that I know is possible at lower proof ranges. You can get good flavor intensity at 40 and 43% alcohol. This one's not doing it though. There's enough water here or whatever in the vatting or the process that is kind of just making this at 80 proof a little tame for me. And I'm just trying to verbalize that might not be a bad thing for somebody who is like looking for a more smooth and approachable whiskey, or maybe doesn't want to think too much about the whiskey. It's definitely flavorful, but just not as intense as I would like. And I guess I was hoping like between the like sherry finish and a little bit extra age that maybe the water at 80 proof wouldn't be such a detractor. But unfortunately it is. So maybe the 21 will be better. I don't know. It's not bad, but it's not great. But we're going to pour some of this 12 and we'll just do a little bit of AB. But I think mostly what we'll find is that this 12 is just like way less on the sherry. That's probably what we'll find. That being said, these bottles pop really good. I love the bottle. They did something right with the bottle design. Oh, hi, you're back. What are you up to? Hey. Hey. What are you up to? You're being a little nosy. A little nosy. Okay, can you not put your butt over there? You just want to get into stuff. You're bored and want to get into stuff. So this 12. Way more on the like perfume. Way more on the malt. And as you kind of might expect, the 16 is like way more on the sherry. It's way more on the raisin. It's like he had just opened one of those little red boxes of raisins. You remember those? What do you think? Do you think raisins? You think raisins? You think alcohol? Yeah. And on the 12, I'm mostly hitting the malt character. More perfumey though. I think they sort of share the citrus. But it's definitely on the 12, malt and perfume. What are you getting into? Hey. Oh, I knew you would get into that. Yeah, malt and perfume on the 12 and raisin dried fruit character on the 16. That's definitely what pops. These like tops from the bottles, she just loves to try to eat them. Can't eat those. You're a cat. Even I won't eat those. All right, let's remind ourselves of the 16 real quick. What, you want some? No, of course you don't. It's alcohol. Some of the like malt character and honey is kind of joining in on that 16 now. The sherry is kind of like having a little bit of a, it's going down a little bit. Did you taint this? Seems okay. But yeah, the 12 is way maltier and way perfumier. I think that perfume is probably just more present because there's no like super overwhelming sherry component, which would make sense. I'm not like hitting the like vanilla or like citrus things that I think we were hitting before when we kind of like solo drew this 12. Yeah, I wouldn't even say the 12 is sweeter. It's kind of more like malty, a little bit more of the like, kind of weird. It's hard to describe this exactly, but it's like bourbon barrel spice on the finish, whereas like the 16 has more like sherry related spice. I'm having a hard time like describing the difference in those two things at this second, but when you taste it, you can kind of tell this is like a sherry barrel related spice, and this is like a bourbon barrel related spice. The 12 is a little bit like woodier too, a little bit woodier on the back end. At least for me. That being said, comparing these two side by side, it's really obvious that the 16 is like less watery, both because of the age, probably because of the sherry finish, and because, again, not only the age having more time in the barrel to have more barrel impact. But the age having more angel share, so there's less water in the whiskey as well. You can kind of really tell the 16 is much less watery than the 12. On top of the fact that the flavors are slightly different, it's more impactful in flavor too. It's still a little tame in flavor, but you can really tell side by side that the 12 is much more watered down than the 16. So it's not bad. It would be a nice, like, chill sipper, but it's not really like throwing that flavor punch that I'm looking for. And I think it's probably, again, just, it's approachable whiskey. It's meant to be approachable. And as a result, it's not like big and strong and throwing intense flavors at you. That's like the basic assessment, I suppose, off the fresh crack. That being said, things can change off the fresh crack. You could have some flavor development happen, but probably won't change the intensity too much.